In Central Park, a millionaire CEO in a navy suit and red tie watches his quiet son in a wheelchair. A scrappy boy sits beside him, spots a scuffed toy T-Rex, and sparks a laugh. When a rich kid bumps the chair, the boy says, "Apologize now." Silence falls. The T-Rex becomes their flag. Second chances knock once. If family finds you on a bench like this, do you take him home or let him go? The elm in Central Park cast a shadow over a green bench. Nathaniel Carter stood a few steps away in a navy suit and red tie, deep blue eyes watchful. Tall and broad-shouldered, dark hair side-swept with gray, square jaw, a warm smile he hadn't used much lately. Today, he tried to let the bench belong to his son. Caleb sat centered on it, hands loose on his wheelchair rims. 8, bright and quiet since the accident. In his lap, a scuffed toy T-Rex leaned on its tail, chin up like a guard dog. The dinosaur had crossed hospital rooms and sleepless nights with him. He kept it close the way other kids kept secrets. Saxophone notes curled through the trees. Nate didn't hover. He was close enough to step in, far enough to let Caleb be a boy among boys. A gust rattled the elm, leaves flurrying like soft coins. A small boy in a gray hoodie took the far end of the bench, backpack hanging by one strap, sneakers worn at the toes. He looked at the T-Rex, then at Caleb. "That your dinosaur?" he asked. Calm voice. No push. Caleb nodded. "He's got a lot of scratches," the boy said. "Means he's seen things." Caleb touched the ribbed plastic with a thumb. He didn't look up. Nate shifted, but stayed still. He heard the therapist in his head. Let him lead. The boy eased back, elbows on his knees. "I'm Jamie," he said. "You don't have to tell me your name." A long second. "Caleb." "Nice to meet you, Caleb," Jamie said, like this was a real meeting. His eyes flicked to the wheels and away again. No stare. "Is T-Rex the boss or the bodyguard?" Caleb's mouth twitched. "Both," he said, barely louder than the trees. Jamie's grin flashed, quick and grateful. "Can I see him?" he asked, hands out, ready to take no for an answer. Nate held his breath. Caleb studied Jamie's hands, then tipped the toy into them. Jamie turned the T-Rex once, careful. "He's got balance," he murmured. "Tail works like a counterweight. Keeps him steady." Caleb watched, focused in a way Nate hadn't seen in months. The park's noise thinned into a hush between boys deciding whether to trust each other. "Thanks," Jamie said. He set the dinosaur back, head first as if returning a crown. "Looks like he keeps you company." Caleb nodded. "He does." Jamie drummed a soft rhythm on the bench. "Benches help too," he said. "You can see a lot from here." Nate noticed the tugged-down sleeves, the dirt crescents under Jamie's nails, the careful posture of a kid who'd learned not to ask for much. He also noticed the inch Caleb's shoulders had dropped, the easier breath. "Do you come here a lot?" Caleb asked. "When it's not too cold," Jamie said. "There's a diner a few blocks down. If you sit by the window, you can watch the park lights come on." He stopped, like he'd said too much. "I like lights," Caleb said. "Me too," Jamie answered. "They make things feel like they're still happening." A soccer ball skittered past, chased by laughter. Caleb flinched, but stayed. Jamie planted his shoes, a small brace against the rush, and the noise slid away. The sun dropped lower, gilding the bench. Jamie tucked his hands into his sleeves. Caleb mirrored the motion. The T-Rex stood between them, scratched and steady. "Want to sit a while?" Caleb asked. "Yeah," Jamie said. "I can sit." Nate drew a breath that reached the bottom of his lungs. The elm whispered. For a long minute, nobody moved. Two boys kept each other company, and a father kept watch without stepping in. He saw it, the smallest change. Not a smile, not yet, but a brightness at the edge of Caleb's gaze, as if light had found a way in. Nate stayed where he was and let the moment be. The day tilted toward something he couldn't name yet. He didn't know this was the first moment of bringing someone home. The late afternoon light stretched long shadows across Central Park as Nate remained by the elm, watching. Caleb leaned forward in his wheelchair, the scuffed T-Rex balanced on his knees. Beside him, Jamie sat with a hoodie tugged low, hands fidgeting in his lap. "Dinosaurs didn't just roar," Jamie said, picking up where he'd left off. "T-Rex had to balance. Tail like a lever, legs strong but not too heavy. That's how he stayed up." Caleb blinked, listening harder than he had in months. "Really?" Jamie grinned. "Yeah. That's why he ruled the land. Never tipped over." He nudged the toy gently back toward Caleb. "Kind of like you. Wheels keep you steady." A sound slipped out of Caleb, half laugh, half breath. Nate froze, heart pounding. His boy hadn't smiled like that since before the accident. Nate crouched to their level. "That's a good explanation," he said carefully. His deep voice softened. "Thanks for keeping him company, Jamie." Jamie's shoulders lifted. "Any time." Nate's eyes traced the boy's thin frame, the frayed cuffs of his sleeves. "You eatin' today?" he asked. Jamie hesitated, shrugging. "I'm fine." Nate knew that answer. He'd given it himself once, long before success and tailored suits. "How about dinner with us?" he offered. "No strings, just food." Jamie shifted on the bench. "I don't take handouts." Nate shook his head. "Not a handout. An invitation. Guests, not charity." Caleb's fingers tightened around the T-Rex. He looked at Jamie, then back at his dad. "Come with us," he said quietly. Jamie studied Caleb's face, searching for judgment, but finding only hope. Slowly, he nodded. Nate rose, signaling the car from the curb. "All right then," he said, voice steady but eyes warmed by something he hadn't felt in years. "Let's get you both home." The SUV glided through the Upper East Side, headlights flickering across brownstones and bakery windows. Inside, Caleb sat beside Jamie, the T-Rex tucked between them like a peace offering. Nate sat opposite, hands clasped, eyes flicking between the boys. They'd just turned onto Madison when a voice pierced the quiet. "Hey, Wheels!" Nate looked up. Outside, at the crosswalk near the school playground, a group of private school boys lingered. One of them, a stocky kid in a blazer, pointed at Caleb. "Did your driver forget your brakes or something?" Caleb's face flushed. He shrank into his seat. Before Nate could react, Jamie popped the door open. "Stay here," he told Caleb and stepped out. Nate's hand hovered at the latch but paused. Jamie walked straight up to the boy. "Apologize." The other kids laughed. Jamie didn't blink. "Now?" The lead kid sneered. "Who are you? His babysitter?" "No," Jamie said. "I'm someone who knows what respect looks like, and you don't." His tone didn't waver, didn't rise, just firm, steady. The boy hesitated, then muttered, "Sorry." Jamie waited, looked at Caleb. "You okay?" Caleb gave the smallest nod. Jamie climbed back in. Nate stared at him. "You didn't have to do that." Jamie shrugged. "He was mean, and Caleb's my friend now." Nate let out a slow breath. For the first time in a year, Caleb looked not just calm, alive. Nate reached over and gently touched Caleb's shoulder. "You all right?" "I think so." Caleb looked at Jamie. "No one ever stands up for me like that." Jamie grinned. "Well, I do." The SUV turned the corner and pulled in front of a tall brownstone glowing under warm entry lights. "Home," Nate said. "Let's get inside." As the boys rolled and stepped out, the T-Rex slipped slightly from Caleb's lap. Jamie caught it, held it gently. Nate watched them. Two boys, one fragile in body, the other bruised by the world. But something about them felt whole. Nate paused at the front steps, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, Evelyn. He'll stay the night. I've called Johnson to ensure legal review. Everything's above board. Just one meal, one safe night. That's all." He hung up, watching as Jamie hesitated at the threshold of the brownstone. The warm light from inside spilled across the sidewalk. But Jamie's sneakered feet stayed frozen on the stone. Caleb noticed. "It's okay," Dad's place doesn't bite. Jamie chuckled nervously. I've just never been in something this big without cleaning it. Nate stepped beside him. Tonight, you're not cleaning anything. You're a guest, with boundaries. Jamie finally nodded and stepped inside. The foyer gleamed. Polished oak floors, soft lighting, the scent of cinnamon and old books. A housekeeper greeted them with a kind nod. Jamie, this is Maria, Nate said gently. She's setting up a guest room just for tonight. You'll have your own bathroom, fresh clothes, no questions asked. Okay? Jamie's eyes scanned the paintings, the fireplace, the marble staircase. Okay. As Maria led Jamie away, Nate crouched beside Caleb, loosening the footstraps of his wheelchair. You're quiet, Nate murmured. Caleb gave a soft shrug. I feel safer with him. Nate nodded, emotion tugging beneath his voice. That means something. In the dining room, dinner was already warming. Grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, roasted carrots. When Jamie returned, freshly showered in borrowed clothes slightly too big, his damp hair combed back, he walked slowly, cautiously, as if afraid his footsteps might echo wrong. Caleb waved him over. Sit here. This is the best seat, close to the rolls. Jamie smiled and sat beside him. The two boys fell into an easy rhythm. Caleb pointed to the gravy boat. Jamie passed it. Jamie struggled to cut his chicken with the dull silverware. Caleb used his fork to steady it. Nate didn't interrupt. He watched. Something inside him, something knotted, began to slowly loosen. Halfway through dinner, the front door opened. Evelyn entered, her long coat damp from the evening mist. She paused in the archway, surveying the scene. Caleb eating with genuine ease, Jamie leaning over to whisper something that made him laugh. She walked over to Nate. That's him? Nate nodded. Jamie. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Caleb, whose posture had softened for the first time in months. His fingers rested easily on the table, no trembling. Nate leaned in. He stood up for Caleb tonight, in the middle of the street. No fear, just kindness. He didn't ask for anything, just gave. Evelyn watched as Jamie gently wiped mashed potatoes from Caleb's chin with a napkin. You said one night? She asked softly. One dinner, Nate replied, but maybe that's not all this should be. Evelyn didn't respond, but her gaze lingered on the scuffed T-Rex sitting between the boys. A symbol now, shared, understood. As dessert arrived, warm apple crumble, Jamie hesitated. Is it okay if I save half? He asked quietly. Sometimes it's nice to know you've got something sweet waiting. Nate smiled. Of course, Maria will wrap it for you. Jamie nodded, eyes bright. Thanks, Mr. Carter. Nate paused. Nate. Just Nate. Jamie looked at him. Thanks, Nate. In that moment, something shifted. Not just between man and boy, but across the table, across the pain Caleb had carried alone. 3 lives, 1 dinner, and everything had changed. The guest room was small by Upper East Side standards but warm, with navy flannel sheets and a lamp that glowed soft amber. Jamie stood at the doorway, his duffel still clutched in one hand even though it was nearly empty. You don't have to stand guard, Nate said gently from behind. No one's coming to take anything. Jamie nodded, not quite meeting his eyes. Old habit. I get it. Nate motioned to the dresser. There are fresh socks and pajamas in the drawer, no logos, no scratchy tags, just soft cotton. Jamie's fingers twitched. Thanks. We don't expect anything back, Nate added. You're not here because you owe us. Jamie looked up, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Okay. Nate turned toward the hallway. Bathroom's through there. Maria's left towels, and no one's checking if you take 1 minute or 10. Jamie's lips curled slightly. I'll try not to flood the place. Downstairs, Caleb was already in his room, a book resting on his lap. The T-Rex sat upright on his nightstand. Nate peeked in. Lights out? Caleb looked up. He said the T-Rex had to balance so it wouldn't fall over. that it needed a strong center. Nate smiled. That's true. You like him? Caleb nodded slowly. He's not scared of things like I am. You're not scared, Caleb. You're careful. That's different. Caleb hesitated. He looked at me like I wasn't broken. Nate's throat tightened. He stepped in and brushed Caleb's hair back from his forehead. You're not. You never were. Will he stay? Caleb asked, almost whispering. Nate paused. We'll see. Right now, we give him rest. Across the hall, Jamie stood under warm water, steam rising around him. He closed his eyes, letting the water wash weeks of dirt and worry from his skin. The last time he'd showered without rushing was... He didn't want to think about it. He dried quickly, pulled on the clean pajamas, and opened the door to find Caleb waiting in the hallway in his chair. I have something, Caleb said, for tonight. Jamie followed him back to his room, where Caleb handed him a second pillow and a graphic novel from his shelf. You can read here if you want. You don't have to talk. Jamie blinked. You sure? Caleb nodded. It's not charity. It's just better when someone's close. Jamie settled into the armchair by the bed, T-Rex on the armrest between them. He opened the book, reading quietly as Caleb leaned back, eyelids heavy. Neither of them spoke, but the silence wasn't empty. Downstairs, Nate poured himself a glass of water and stood at the window, looking out over the street. Evelyn joined him. He's reading to Caleb, she said softly. Nate didn't turn. He didn't ask for a bed or food, just listened. You're thinking of keeping him, she said. I'm thinking Caleb hasn't looked that alive in months. Don't rush this, Evelyn cautioned. There's a process, a system. I know, Nate said. That's why I called the pediatrician for a house visit. And tomorrow, a social worker. Evelyn nodded slowly. It's good, as long as we keep boundaries. For Jamie, and for Caleb. Upstairs, the lamp dimmed. The book slipped from Jamie's hand as he nodded off in the chair. Caleb, still half awake, reached for the T-Rex and tucked it under the blanket beside him. No words, no promises, just a boy keeping watch beside another, and a family slowly forming, one quiet night at a time. Morning light crept through the brownstone's tall windows, golden and gentle. Maria moved quietly through the kitchen, preparing scrambled eggs and warm toast, her steps soft on the polished floors. Upstairs, the house stirred awake, but not with noise, with care. Nate tapped gently on Jamie's door. There was no answer. When he opened it, he found Jamie curled in the armchair, the graphic novel still balanced on his lap, his chest rising in steady rhythm. But Caleb was already awake. He stayed all night, Caleb whispered. Nate stepped in. You okay? Caleb nodded. It was quiet. I liked it. Just then, Jamie stirred, blinking into the light. He looked at Caleb first, then at Nate, and sat up quickly. Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep here. I can go. No one's sending you anywhere, Nate said calmly. In fact, we have a guest coming to see you this morning, a doctor. Just a quick check here in the house, nothing scary. Jamie stiffened. It's not a trick, Nate assured. She works with Carter Health Tech, pediatric rehab specialist. She just wants to make sure you're okay. Caleb added, She helped me after the accident. She's nice. That helped? A little. Downstairs, the pediatrician arrived. Dr. Lisa Rowan, mid-50s, sharp but kind-eyed. She greeted Jamie with a smile and a clipboard. Hi, Jamie. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to, but I'd like to check a few things. We'll stay right here on the couch. That okay? Jamie nodded, eyes flicking once to Nate, who gave a reassuring nod back. Dr. Rowan took her time. She checked bruises on his arms, an old one near his ribs. She asked simple questions about sleep. Appetite, pain. You're smart, she said at one point. Tough, too. That's not easy when you've had to take care of yourself. Jamie looked down. I didn't do great. Dr. Rowan tilted her head. You kept yourself alive. You found safety for one night. You did just fine. When she finished, she stood and spoke to Nate privately in the study. There are signs of past trauma, some healed fractures, but nothing fresh. No signs of immediate danger. He's underweight and likely undernourished, but stable. No infection, no red flags. Nate folded his arms. And legally? I've filed the mandatory report, Dr. Rowan said. That brings in social services. But the moment you mentioned temporary kin-like placement, the door opened. Since he's here voluntarily and not in crisis, you can request emergency care status until court review. Nate nodded. I'll handle the paperwork. Johnson's already prepping it. Dr. Rowan paused. Just be ready. It won't be smooth. No matter how kind you are, the system has rules. I understand, Nate replied, but we owe him more than one dinner. When the doorbell rang again, it wasn't a visitor. It was a social worker. Ms. Harper, early 40s, clear-eyed, clipboard in hand, calm and practiced. She sat across from Jamie, her voice measured. I'm not here to scare you. You haven't done anything wrong. But we need to understand where your parents are, where you came from. Jamie was quiet. Then, my mom... She died 3 months ago. Dad left before that. I think he was in jail. Ms. Harper nodded gently. Do you know his name? Jamie whispered it. I'll look into it, she said. In the meantime, would you be comfortable staying here, just until we figure things out? Jamie hesitated, looking at Caleb, who gave the slightest nod. I want to, Jamie said, if that's allowed. It is, she smiled, and we'll make sure it stays that way, if this is what's best. That night, Jamie sat beside Caleb again. This time, they didn't read. They just talked. About dinosaurs, about wheelchairs that turned faster than shopping carts, about pancakes versus waffles. And when Caleb handed Jamie the T-Rex, saying, he doesn't just belong to me anymore, Jamie didn't say anything. He just hugged it close. Later that week, Nate sat in the quiet study as the final report came in. The folder was thin, only a few typed pages and a grainy school photo of Jamie, clearly years out of date. Ms. Harper had done what she promised. Jamie's mother, Lydia Cross, passed away from pneumonia. No medical care, no insurance. It happened behind a closed diner in the Bronx. Jamie stayed near it after she died, slept under the back awning. Local shelters had no intake record, but a few soup kitchens remember him, always alone. And his father? Nate asked. She looked up. Kyle Cross, in and out of jail for minor theft, resisting arrest. Most recently released 9 months ago. There's an unresolved custody flag. No known address. Nate's jaw clenched. So, Jamie's been floating for almost a year. Yes. And because the custody flag exists, technically the court still considers Kyle a potential guardian, though he hasn't made contact or filed anything. Nate stood. Can we challenge that? You can file for emergency kin-like placement, with a guardian ad litem and temporary foster status while the court reviews. I've already started that, Nate said. My legal team's preparing the motion. Ms. Harper raised an eyebrow. You don't waste time. Nate's expression didn't change. He doesn't have time to waste. Back in the living room, Caleb and Jamie were assembling a mobility puzzle game on a tablet. The adaptive software, one of Carter Health Tech's earliest innovations, was designed to help children improve cognitive response tied to physical therapy. Jamie leaned in. Why's the character in a wheelchair? Caleb smiled. Because the people who made this think I can still win. You can, Jamie said without hesitation. I'll help. Their fingers worked together, Caleb guiding, Jamie encouraging, until the digital maze lit up in victory. Nate watched from the hallway, something softening in his face. He hadn't seen Caleb that engaged since before the crash, before the silence, before the guilt. That night, Evelyn returned to the brownstone. She hadn't stayed the last few nights, choosing to keep a steady distance while things settled. But now, with updates in hand, she felt the shift. She knocked on Jamie's open door. He sat on the floor, organizing 2 action figures and the T-Rex between them. "I was thinking," Evelyn said gently, "of making spaghetti tomorrow night. Caleb mentioned you like that." Jamie blinked. "Really?" She smiled. "Really. You can even help if you want. I'm not great with garlic bread." Jamie grinned. "I'm good at burning things. Maybe we'd make a good team." Evelyn laughed. "Deal." Then she sat on the edge of the bed, her tone quieting. "I want you to know, no one here is trying to replace anyone in your life, but we do want you to feel like this can be a safe place, for as long as you need." Jamie nodded slowly. "Is it okay if I stay up a little longer?" "Of course." After she left, Jamie crawled into bed and placed the T-Rex carefully beside his pillow. Downstairs, Nate and Evelyn met in the study. "He's opening up," Evelyn said, "to all of us." Nate nodded. "And Caleb's doing better. He's sleeping through the night. He's laughing." "Jamie's become a light switch," Evelyn murmured. Something turned back on. Then she hesitated. "But, Nate, Vivian won't like this. She's been calling. She wants to stop by tomorrow." Nate's expression cooled. "Let her come. You know what she'll say." "Yes," Nate replied, standing. "But this isn't her house." And upstairs, 2 boys slept soundly. One in a bed, one on a floor mattress, while a scuffed toy dinosaur sat between them like a quiet sentinel. Not guarding, just belonging. The doorbell rang at precisely 9:00 a.m. Vivian Langford never arrived unannounced, and never arrived late. She stepped into the Carter brownstone wrapped in a cream cashmere coat, pearls at her throat, heels clicking like punctuation. Her assistant followed behind with a handbag the size of a weekend suitcase. "Nathaniel," she said with a tight smile, "you look tired." "I look like someone handling what matters," Nate replied, adjusting the cuffs of his navy suit. "Coffee?" She waved it off. "No, thank you. I'm not here to chat." Her eyes drifted to the stairwell, where Caleb's laughter echoed faintly. "Is that him?" she asked coolly. "Yes, that's Caleb," Nate said pointedly. "And Jamie." "Jamie," she repeated, lips pressing together, the child with no verified parent, no address, and no background check. Nate didn't flinch. "The child who stood up for my son when no one else did, who made him smile for the first time in a year." Vivian walked to the window, surveying the courtyard. "You're inviting public scrutiny. You're the founder of a billion-dollar healthcare firm, not some impulsive do-gooder." Nate's jaw tightened. "You know what this company does, right? We create mobility tools for kids like Caleb. We build dignity into steel and software. Are you telling me the face of that mission can't offer one boy a warm bed and safety?" Vivian turned. "The world won't see it that way." "Then the world needs new glasses," Nate shot back, "and maybe a new board of directors." She raised a brow. "Is that a threat?" "It's a reminder," he said, voice calm but firm. "This house isn't for appearances. It's for healing." Just then, Caleb wheeled into the room, Jamie trailing behind, still in his pajama pants and mismatched socks. Vivian's face shifted ever so slightly, controlled politeness masking discomfort. Caleb looked up. "Grandma, this is Jamie. He's my friend." Jamie, respectful but wary, extended a hand. "Ma'am." Vivian hesitated, then took it. Caleb rolled closer. "When he's around, I don't feel so scared all the time." Vivian blinked. That she hadn't expected. "What do you mean, darling?" she asked gently. "I mean, I'm not scared when he's around," Caleb said. "I don't feel broken." Jamie's cheeks flushed, eyes dropping to the T-Rex tucked under his arm. Nate stepped forward, voice quiet now. "Jamie didn't just walk into our lives. He changed them." Vivian looked between them. 2 boys. 1 chair. 1 toy dinosaur. A symbol, unspoken, of something they shared now, something no wealth could buy. Still, her voice was cool. "Nathaniel, Households like ours invite attention. Reputations matter. Nate met her eyes. Reputations also change, sometimes for the better. Vivian stood silently for a moment, then turned to Jamie. "What do you want, young man?" Jamie hesitated. Then, quietly, "I want to stay, just long enough to stop looking over my shoulder." Caleb nodded beside him. "We can share." Vivian's lips pressed together again, but softer this time. Less steel, more surrender. "We'll see what the courts say," she said finally. "But for now, breakfast would be appropriate, don't you think?" Jamie blinked. Sure." Vivian gave a crisp nod and headed toward the dining room. Nate leaned down to Jamie and murmured, "That was a win. Trust me." Jamie looked at Caleb. "Was that your grandma?" "Yeah," Caleb said with a sigh. "She's intense. But if she asks you to pass the jam, just pass it. Fast." The boys giggled, and the tension lifted. In the dining room, under high ceilings and sunlight, a strange new family began their morning, with jam, eggs, laughter, and a little toy T-Rex sitting quietly between two plates, a symbol of bravery, a promise of belonging. The house was quieter than usual that night. Dinner had been unusually smooth. Even Vivian had complimented the roast chicken, and now the lights were dimmed in the brownstone, the boys tucked into their respective beds. But Jamie wasn't asleep. He lay staring at the ceiling in the guest room, the toy T-Rex cradled on his chest, his fingers tracing the faded scars in its plastic. He could still hear voices from earlier, not from Caleb, not from Nate. Vivian. "We should step back until the courts decide. There's no point getting attached if it's temporary. This isn't a permanent solution." She didn't know he'd been standing just outside the hallway when she said it. She didn't know that every syllable had landed like a nail in soft wood. Temporary. Not family. Not wanted. Jamie slid quietly out of bed and gathered his clothes into the old canvas backpack he never fully unpacked. He moved like a shadow down the hall, pausing only to look toward Caleb's room. The door was slightly open. Caleb slept curled on his side, one arm over a pillow, a small lamp casting a warm glow across his face. Jamie hesitated. He wanted to say goodbye, to explain, but how do you say goodbye to the first person who ever made you feel like you belonged? He set the T-Rex on the floor just inside the door, then turned and disappeared down the back stairs. The note was simple, neatly written, folded once. "Thanks for dinner. Tell Caleb I'm sorry." Jamie. Nate found it early the next morning, sitting beside the breakfast tray outside Jamie's room. When he opened the door and saw the empty bed, the air left his lungs. "Evelyn," he called out sharply. "He's gone." Within 10 minutes, she had the social worker on the phone, and Nate was already scanning security footage from the brownstone's front entrance. It wasn't dramatic, just a small boy in a hoodie stepping into the cold before dawn. Evelyn's voice was tight with worry. "Nate, he doesn't know the city. He barely knows where to go." Nate's jaw clenched. "He knows survival. That's what scares me." He turned to Caleb's room. "Did he say anything to you?" Caleb looked stunned. "No. We played late. He said he was tired, that's all." His face crumpled. Is he not coming back?" Nate knelt beside him. "We're going to find him, but I need your help. I need to know everywhere he's ever talked about, places he mentioned, anything." Caleb's brows furrowed. "He said he used to sleep near a diner, and once he said something about the train station, how he liked to watch people go places." Nate stood. "Penn Station. It makes sense. It's warm, open all night. He might try to find his father." Evelyn grabbed her coat. "I'm coming with you." But Caleb wheeled forward. "No, I need to go." Both parents paused. "Absolutely not," Evelyn said. "You're not well enough." "He's my friend," Caleb said, trembling but firm. "He helped me feel brave. Now I need to do the same." Nate exchanged a glance with Evelyn. "We'll bring the van," he said. "Accessible seating. We'll have an aide and a police contact waiting at the station." Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. Within an hour, they were en route. Nate in the passenger seat, Caleb beside him, flanked by a nurse from his rehab clinic. Evelyn rode behind, fingers clutched tight around her phone. Penn Station loomed ahead. The search was on. They moved quickly, showing Jamie's photo to security. It didn't take long. Transit police had seen a boy matching his description lingering near the departure boards. Platform 12, Northeast Corridor. Nate rushed ahead, and then they saw him. Small, hunched, hoodie pulled tight, staring up at the screen. The toy T-Rex poked from his side pocket. Caleb cried out, "Jamie!" Jamie froze, then slowly turned. His eyes were rimmed red. "I wasn't going to steal anything," he said quietly. I thought if I found my dad first, then people would stop saying I'm nothing." Nate stepped forward, his voice steady. "You're not nothing." Jamie's breath hitched. "You're someone," Nate continued, crouching low. "You saved my son's heart." Caleb wheeled forward and held out the T-Rex Jamie had left behind. "We need you." The toy sat in both their hands now. Not a goodbye. A bridge. A symbol of something new. The concourse buzzed with noise. Departing trains, conductor announcements, the scrape of luggage wheels. But in that moment, everything around Jamie felt muted. Just the sight of Caleb holding out that toy T-Rex, and Nate crouched at his eye level, voice warm and steady, grounding him like a lighthouse in a storm. "I don't want to mess anything up," Jamie whispered. "You haven't," Nate said. "You've only made things better." Jamie looked down. "I thought if I left first, no one could say I got kicked out." "You weren't kicked out," Nate said softly. "You just got scared. That happens. But we're still here." Caleb wheeled closer, the T-Rex still balanced across his lap. "You left him behind," he said softly, "but I knew you'd come back for him." Jamie sniffed, swiping at his nose. "I didn't mean to leave you." "I know," Caleb said. "That's why I'm here." Jamie blinked, taking in the strange image. Caleb out in public, in a bustling train station surrounded by people, and yet calm, focused, strong, just like he'd always wished he could be. "You brought him?" Jamie asked Nate, voice barely audible. Nate nodded. "He insisted. And he was right to." A voice buzzed overhead. "Amtrak train 146 to Boston boarding at platform 12. Jamie looked up at it. "That's the train I was thinking about. Not because I know where it goes, just because it's far." "You don't have to go far to start over," Nate said, standing now. "Sometimes, the new beginning is right where you are." A moment passed. Then Jamie nodded slowly. "Can we go home now?" he asked. Caleb grinned. "Yeah, let's go home." Back at the brownstone, the mood shifted. Nate carried Jamie's backpack in one hand and the T-Rex in the other. No one said much in the car, they didn't need to. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. As they stepped through the front door, Evelyn was waiting. Jamie hesitated, eyes down. "I'm sorry, ma'am." But Evelyn didn't lecture him. She simply walked over and pulled him into a hug. "No more disappearing," she whispered. "You scared us." Jamie's voice cracked. "I thought you wanted me gone." "I wanted to protect you," she replied. "That's different." Vivian, surprisingly, was also in the living room. She stood, arms crossed, clearly having waited all day. "Jamie," she said carefully, "I owe you an apology." Jamie looked up, eyes wide. "I said things you weren't meant to hear, but that doesn't make them any less hurtful," Vivian continued. "I was wrong. Caleb was right. You make him brave." Jamie didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Vivian turned to Nate. "I spoke to a friend on the family court panel." Nate's brow rose. "You what?" "I didn't pull strings," she clarified. "I asked for clarity, and Jamie's case is getting reviewed next week." Evelyn stepped in. "We'll be ready." Jamie looked between them all. "Does that mean I get to stay?" Nate knelt again. "It means we're fighting for you, officially." Jamie's shoulders relaxed for the first time since they'd met. That night, back in Caleb's room, the two boys lay side by side. Caleb in his bed, Jamie in a sleeping bag beside him. Between them, the T-Rex stood guard on the nightstand like a sentry. "Hey," Caleb whispered. "Yeah?" "You can tell me stuff," Caleb said, "even if it's weird. Even if you think it makes you look bad." Jamie stared up at the ceiling. "Like what?" Caleb shrugged. "Like why you always keep your shoes on when you sleep." Jamie paused, then pulled the blanket tighter. "'Cause you never know when you gotta run." A beat. "Maybe now you don't have to," Caleb said. Jamie didn't answer, but he did slide one shoe off, then the other. The dinosaur stood between them, silent but steady. A promise. A beginning. The next morning, sunlight filtered gently through Caleb's window, catching on the plastic edge of the T-Rex. Jamie blinked awake to the soft sound of Caleb's breathing and the faint hum of birds outside. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, Jamie didn't wake in a panic. He didn't reach for his shoes. He didn't check the door. He just lay still, warm, safe, until Caleb stirred beside him. "You drooled on the sleeping bag." Jamie snorted. "Yeah? You snore like a vacuum cleaner." They both burst out laughing, quietly, like a secret between them, their first real morning as brothers in everything but blood. Downstairs, Nate stood at the kitchen counter in his usual crisp shirt, red tie loosened slightly, a mug of coffee in one hand. He was flipping through case documents from the family attorney, custody statutes, temporary guardianship forms, emergency placement requests. Evelyn watched him from across the island, arms folded. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I did," he replied, distracted. "Just not much." She took the seat beside him. "You're doing everything right, Nate?" He finally looked up. "I just keep thinking, what if the courts say no?" "Then we keep fighting," she said simply. "But he's not alone anymore. That changes everything." Before he could answer, the pitter-patter of feet echoed from the stairs. Jamie appeared in a fresh set of clothes, barefoot, still tousled from sleep. "Morning," he mumbled. "Morning, Jamie," Nate said with a warm smile. "Hungry?" Jamie nodded. "We've got pancakes, strawberries, and Caleb's request, peanut butter drizzle." Jamie grinned, sliding into a stool at the island. "Best house I ever broke into." Evelyn laughed. "Let's not make a habit of it." Caleb rolled in moments later, still groggy but smiling at the smell of maple syrup. As they ate, Nate slid a paper across the counter toward Jamie. Jamie blinked at it. "What's this?" "Something official," Nate said. "It's a form the court requested. You don't have to sign it yet. Just read it." Jamie tilted his head and slowly sounded out the header. "Application for temporary kinship placement. Carter household." His eyes widened. "Wait. This is real?" "Yes," Nate said. "It means, for now, the law recognizes that this is your home." Jamie looked down. His fingers trembled slightly as he touched the edge of the paper. "I never had a paper that said that before." "Well," Evelyn said gently, "you do now." Later that afternoon, Nate had a meeting at Carter Health Tech headquarters, one he couldn't miss. But before he left, he knelt beside Caleb and Jamie at the foot of the staircase. "I'll be back by dinner. You two good?" Caleb nodded. "We're playing chess." Jamie scoffed. "More like he's teaching me how not to lose in 4 moves." "Progress," Nate smiled. Then he looked directly at Jamie. "I meant what I said at the station. You're not nothing." Jamie hesitated. I didn't really believe you then." Nate's voice softened. "And now?" Jamie looked at Caleb, who was arranging the pawns, and then back at Nate. "Now I do." That evening, a package arrived. Nate's assistant had sent it over from the office, something that had been dropped off anonymously at the building's front desk. A small brown box with Jamie's name scribbled in marker. Inside, a single sheet of folded paper, and beneath it, a photograph. Jamie opened it slowly. The photo was old, slightly water-damaged, but unmistakable. A woman with kind eyes kneeling beside a toddler. Jamie. In the background, a man blurred but tall, hand on Jamie's shoulder. Nate saw the flicker of recognition on Jamie's face. "Is that?" Jamie nodded, speechless. "My dad." The letter was short. "Jamie, I'm sorry I left. I was trying to get clean, to be someone you'd be proud of. I saw you once, near the station, but you looked okay, so I stayed away. This isn't the end. It's just not my chapter right now. Love you, always." Dad. Jamie folded the paper slowly and handed it to Nate. "You okay?" Nate asked. Jamie wiped his eyes, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Then he glanced at Caleb. "You still up for that rematch?" Caleb grinned. "Only if you're ready to lose in 5 moves this time." The T-Rex sat between them again that night. Not just a toy, a witness to change, to trust, to the beginning of something real. The following morning arrived with crisp air and a faint breeze rolling in from the Hudson. Leaves rustled along the Upper East Side sidewalks as sunlight bathed the Carter brownstone in soft gold. Inside, the atmosphere was quieter than usual, but not heavy. It was the hush of preparation, of waiting. Today was the custody hearing. Jamie stood near the foyer mirror, tugging gently at the collar of his button-up shirt. Caleb sat beside him in his wheelchair, adjusting the tiny dinosaur pin clipped to his lapel. Nate's idea, as a subtle nod to the T-Rex they both cherished. "Are you nervous?" Jamie asked, voice barely above a whisper. Caleb nodded. "Yeah, but I'm also kind of excited. They'll finally see who you are." Jamie tried to smile, but it faltered. "What if they don't?" "They will," Caleb said, "because I do, and my dad does." Downstairs, Nate stood in the study reviewing a thick folder of legal documents with the family attorney. Evelyn joined them, hair pinned neatly, hands clenched tighter than she realized. "They'll ask about stability, income, discipline structure," the attorney warned, "and they may ask Jamie if he feels safe." "He does," Nate said firmly. "We know that," Evelyn added, "but they'll want confirmation." The attorney paused, then looked directly at Nate. "Are you prepared to testify under oath that you want to pursue full guardianship, even if Jamie's biological father returns?" Nate didn't hesitate. "Yes. And if his father is capable of parenting safely, we'll support reunification. But if not, Jamie deserves consistency. He deserves to be chosen." The courthouse waiting room was sterile, all grays and whites, with walls too clean and chairs too stiff. Jamie sat between Caleb and Evelyn, his fingers curled tight around the T-Rex. Nate knelt in front of him. "No one's asking you to be perfect in there," he said. "Just be honest. That's all." Jamie looked down. "What if they ask about my dad?" "Then tell the truth," Nate said gently. "You can care about him and still want something different. Both can be true." The courtroom doors opened. A clerk called, "Carter Placement Review, Courtroom 3B. Nate stood and held out a hand. Jamie took it. Inside the courtroom, everything felt bigger. The judge, a gray-haired woman with steady eyes, the CPS caseworker, a representative from the district attorney's office, Nate and Evelyn's attorney, and Jamie sitting on a booster cushion at the witness table. He fidgeted until he felt a hand squeeze his from behind. Caleb, just a few feet away, allowed to be present per the family attorney's request. The judge leaned forward. "Jamie, I want you to take a deep breath." Jamie did. "And when you're ready," the judge said, "tell me what you want." Jamie blinked, then spoke. "I want to stay with Mr. Carter and Caleb. I want to go to school and sleep in a real bed and play chess, even though I'm bad at it." The judge smiled faintly. "That's a good start." "And I want to stop running," Jamie added. "I want to stop sleeping with my shoes on." There was a long pause. The room had stilled. Even the court reporter's fingers paused briefly. The judge turned to Nate. "Mr. Carter, do you wish to address the court?" Nate stood. Calm, composed, but his voice was full of feeling. I've built a company that designs rehab tools for kids like my son, but I didn't truly understand the word resilience until I met Jamie. He is not a project. He is not a case file. He's family." The judge looked at the CPS representative. "Do you have any objections?" The woman shook her head. "None, Your Honor. All screenings are clear. The household is stable, trauma-informed, and Jamie's academic records show improvement since the informal placement began." The judge leaned back. Silence. Then, "Temporary kinship placement is approved for 6 months, with a review for permanent guardianship at that time. Jamie may remain in the Carter household. Court is adjourned." As they exited the courthouse, Jamie was quiet for a long time, until he looked up at Nate and whispered, "Does this mean I can call you something else now?" Nate smiled. "Like what?" Jamie hesitated. "Can I call you Dad?" Nate's eyes glistened. "If that's what you want," he said, his voice thick. "Then yes." Caleb grinned from his chair. "Told you she'd say yes." "She?" Jamie blinked. "I mean the judge," Caleb said. "But also the universe." They laughed, a real, full laugh that echoed in the marble hallway. Jamie reached into his pocket, pulled out the T-Rex, and handed it to Caleb. "You keep it today," he said. "We won in there." Caleb cradled it carefully. "We win every day you stay." 2 months had passed since the court's decision, and the Carter brownstone had transformed from a quiet, sterile space into something warmer. There were still elegant art pieces and pristine furniture, but now they shared space with Lego sets, mismatched socks, and the occasional scuffed sneaker left in the hallway. In the kitchen, Jamie stood on a stool, learning how to flip pancakes. "Quick," Caleb instructed from the table. "Now, before it burns." Jamie flipped it, poorly. The pancake folded in half like a tired taco. Nate chuckled from the other side of the counter. "It's abstract. We'll call it a modern fold." Jamie grinned. "Then I'm a modern chef." Caleb held up the T-Rex. "He approves." Later that day, the three of them stood outside Westbrook Academy, a prestigious private school with ivy crawling up its old brick walls. It was orientation day. Jamie adjusted his backpack, nervously eyeing the polished uniforms and well-groomed kids pouring through the gates. He touched the small dinosaur pin Nate had helped him clip onto his shirt that morning. "You sure I belong here?" Jamie asked quietly. Nate knelt beside him, straightening Jamie's collar. "Belonging isn't about where you come from. It's about who you are and who sees you." Jamie looked at Caleb, who gave a small nod. "You got this." Jamie smiled and stepped toward the gate, but then a familiar voice rang out behind them. "Jamie!" They all turned. A tall man stood on the sidewalk, early 40s, weathered face, stubbled jaw. He wore a faded army jacket and held a crumpled manila envelope. Nate moved forward instinctively, placing a hand on Jamie's shoulder. "Do you know him?" Jamie's lips parted. That's my dad." They met in a conference room inside the school, the principal offering them privacy. The man sat across from Jamie, silent for a long moment before speaking. "I didn't know where to find you," he said. "By the time I got out, your mom was gone. I looked, but—" Jamie said nothing. "You okay?" his father asked. Jamie shrugged. "Looks like they've taken care of you." Nate spoke gently. "We've tried." The man's eyes flicked toward him. "You the one raising my son?" "I'm the one who's here," Nate said evenly. Tension filled the room like steam building in a kettle, but then Jamie reached into his backpack and pulled out the T-Rex. He set it on the table between them. "Do you remember this?" he asked. The man blinked. "I got that for you. Your 4th birthday." "You told me it could beat anything," Jamie said, "even nightmares." A silence passed. Then Jamie looked at Nate. "Can I talk to him alone?" Nate hesitated but nodded. "We'll be just outside." 10 minutes later, Jamie stepped back out into the hallway. His eyes were red, but not from crying. Nate and Caleb looked up. Jamie walked over and hugged Caleb first. Tight, long, silent. Then he turned to Nate. "I told him I still care about him," Jamie said. "But I'm not going with him." Nate said nothing, just waited. Jamie continued, voice steadier now. "He said he's not ready to be a dad, but he wanted to see me doing okay." "And you are," Nate said quietly. "You're doing more than okay." Jamie nodded. "He gave me this." He held up the manila envelope. Inside was a folded photo. Jamie, age 4, sitting on his dad's shoulders at a carnival, both of them smiling. Caleb peeked at it. "You look tiny." Jamie slipped it back into the envelope. "I want to keep it, but I want to go home with you." Nate's voice cracked. "Then let's go home." That night, Jamie placed the photo inside the drawer of his nightstand next to the T-Rex. He didn't have to choose between his past and his future anymore. He could carry both, one in each hand. And this time he knew neither hand was empty. The Carter brownstone was buzzing with quiet excitement. A small gathering was underway, a modest celebration, not for headlines or gala photos, but for something far more personal. Caleb had completed his first full week back at school, and Jamie, his very first full week ever. In the living room, soft jazz played over the speakers. Evelyn brought out a tray of cupcakes. A string of handmade decorations hung unevenly across the fireplace mantel. "Welcome home, Team T-Rex." Nate stood by the window, watching the boys play a slow game of chess. Caleb moved a knight. Jamie responded with a bishop. "No mercy, just 'cause I'm in a wheelchair," Caleb teased. Jamie grinned. "You've crushed me 3 times this week. I think you'll survive." Across the room, Vivian Langford stood observing, arms folded, pearls tight around her neck. She had come reluctantly at Evelyn's invitation. For the past month, she'd kept her opinions reserved, but today, even she seemed different. Calmer, less guarded. "I didn't expect the house to feel this alive," Vivian finally said, her voice quieter than usual. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Children tend to bring that." Vivian turned to Nate. "He's doing well." "He's thriving," Nate replied. She hesitated, then added, "You were right. He belongs here." Nate looked at her, surprised by the concession, but nodded respectfully. "Thank you." Vivian turned back to the boys. "I brought something. It's small." She stepped forward and placed a velvet box on the table. Inside sat 2 silver pins, one shaped like a heart, the other a tiny T-Rex. "For them," she said, "to wear at the gala next weekend." "The Carter Health Tech Gala?" Evelyn asked. Vivian nodded. "They'll be the guests of honor." The following Saturday, the ballroom at the Met was filled with light, music, and people in tailored gowns and tuxedos. The annual Carter Health Tech Gala had always honored innovations in pediatric rehab, but this year something felt different, more human. On stage, Nate stood behind the podium in his signature navy suit and red tie, deep blue eyes scanning the crowd. He cleared his throat. "Tonight isn't about profits or patents," he began. "It's about resilience. Not the kind you measure in quarterly reports, but the kind you see in a child's eyes when he chooses to believe in people again." The audience hushed. "I'd like to introduce 2 of our youngest heroes." He gestured to the side of the stage. Caleb wheeled forward proudly, wearing a crisp tux and the dinosaur pin on his lapel. Jamie followed, his tie slightly crooked, the heart pin shining under the lights. Together, they held up a prototype, an adaptive chess set designed by Carter Health Tech for children with limited mobility, designed by Caleb and Jamie. The crowd erupted in applause. After the speeches, Nate found the boys by the refreshment table, sipping sparkling apple cider and pretending to be wine critics. "Too tart," Caleb said. "Hints of apple," Jamie added with a smirk. Nate joined them. "You both were incredible tonight." Jamie looked up. "Think people actually listened?" "They didn't just listen," Nate said. "They saw you. They saw what's possible." Caleb reached into his pocket and pulled out the T-Rex. Scuffed, slightly faded, but still whole. He handed it to Jamie. Jamie laughed. Your turn to keep it. No, Caleb said. Let's share it. Trade it off every week. Jamie nodded. Deal. Nate smiled, watching the exchange. It wasn't about the toy. It was about the bond it represented. Earned, not inherited. As the gala wound down and guests filtered out, Jamie turned to Nate. Do you still think about what would have happened if we never met in the park? All the time, Nate admitted. Jamie looked out at the city lights. It feels like that day was the beginning. It was, Nate said, wrapping an arm around both boys. But tonight is just as important, because it proves we didn't just find each other. We chose each other. Caleb looked up. We're not just a family by chance. Jamie finished the sentence softly. We're a family by choice. And for the first time in a long time, under the chandeliers and spotlights and soft hum of gratitude, no one felt alone. Not the CEO, not the boy from the bench, not the son in the chair, just a family, finally whole.